So MSNBC's Joe Scarborough recently had one of the most insane, unhinged takes ever when he literally went out and said that he does not believe the media should be objective. And in his own words, essentially because objectivity would be a good thing that benefits Donald Trump. I'm not making this up. We're going to react to it today and watch as Ana Kasparian, even a left-winger, completely tears it apart. So I'm Vince for Resist the Mainstream. If you enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Why should you subscribe? Because that way we can keep bringing you videos like this. And that said, we're about to hear possibly one of the worst takes in the history of cable news.
But there's a false equivalency going on in the coverage of this race.
Their objectivity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage every day.
In an effort to appear balanced, to appear objective, mistakes are absolutely being made, and standards are being applied to both candidates here when Donald Trump is a different animal. He is an insurrectionist.
So, first of all, you heard the take there from them, right? How dare they be objective? How dare some people in the media, not all of them, obviously MSNBC doesn't like this, but how dare some people in the news media try to treat Kamala Harris and Donald Trump by relatively equal standards when they're journalists covering an election where the two candidates are running against each other? This is helping Donald Trump. When you are fair to both candidates, it helps Donald Trump. What does that say? All right, let's take a listen to Ana Kasparian's reaction.
Well, the crew over at Morning Joe on MSNBC, you know, the same crew that wanted Biden to continue running in this presidential race, despite the fact that he was suffering from clear cognitive decline. Yeah, those people, they're furious that journalists would have the audacity of ever reporting anything negative on the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, because Trump is he's a special threat. And so since they've decided that Trump is a very special threat, well, then journalists should hide information about Kamala Harris from you so you don't vote for Trump and definitely vote for Kamala Harris. In other words, they want the media to manipulate you and do the exact opposite of journalism.
Which we know they've been doing, but it's kind of shocking. It's kind of appalling to say that out loud, right? Just completely admit that, yeah, we, the so-called journalists, the so-called free press, yeah, we're actively trying to manipulate people to vote for our side. You know, it's kind of a wild thing to say, but okay.
Believe me? Well, why don't we hear co-host Mike Barnicle make his case?
But there's a false equivalency going on in the coverage of this race, in that Donald Trump can say whatever crazy things he wants to say about submarines and sharks and electric batteries, whatever he wants to say. And it's not really covered in the sense that it's covered describing who said it, why he said it, and who the man is, Trump, out of his mind. And always in that story, in the equivalency, the false equivalency by too many reporters and too many American newspapers. There's also, by the way, Kamala Harris changed her mind on fracking. They always throw in something like that in coverage of the story. It's ridiculous. We don't cover the man for how dangerous he is.
So Donald Trump saying something that about sharks or submarines or electric batteries, whatever he was saying, probably like jokes, you know, random offhand comments. Somehow that is worse than Kamala Harris actively flip-flopping an actual policy position that will actually affect the country. I don't even know what the guy was trying to say there, but let's listen to Ana Kasparian's take.
You don't cover the man for how dangerous he is? I don't know. I don't know what country I'm living in, but I feel like we get wall-to-wall coverage about Trump being a danger to this country.
Also true.
It is incessant.
Yeah.
It is all they talk about on MSNBC. Did he just suggest that journalists shouldn't report on Kamala Harris changing her mind on fracking? Yeah. Is that not an important policy that voters should be informed about? And also, is he under the impression that telling Americans the truth about where Kamala Harris stands on the issues automatically means that Donald Trump is going to win the election? See, this is when I started my career, when I started working at TYT back in 2007, there really wasn't like left-wing media. there was like Fox News and the right-wing media infrastructure was kind of being built. And I prided myself and the left wing on the fact that we didn't try to manipulate audiences and we didn't try to lie to people or cover up the truth about our preferred candidates or preferred politicians. We didn't want to stoop low and do what the right wing was doing with their misinformation, with the fact that they would omit incredibly relevant, important parts of the story in order to make Republicans look good and Democrats look bad. And now we're in this awful era of conditioning audiences and readers to expect journalists to cheerlead like partisan hacks for one candidate or the other. And if you don't do it, if you don't engage in it, they get mad at you. You're supposed to be my cheerleader. You're supposed to cheerlead for my preferred candidate. What are you doing? How dare you talk about Kamala Harris and how she went from being against fracking to now saying she's totally in favor of fracking? How dare you?
Well, this is, I think, kind of a dangerous aspect of modern America, which is the consolidation of power across so many different levels. It's not just the government. It's the government, the media, corporate America, etc. And they all kind of, in the bureaucracy, and they all kind of work together and they all kind of are on the same team, right? So you talk about checks and balances, for instance, when it comes to the Constitution, right? Congress, the White House, the Supreme Court, all that stuff. But what's kind of not talked about is there's not really a lot of checks and balances, I guess, when it comes to society right now, because it's supposed to also be this little structure where, for instance, the media holds the government accountable, but it's not happening like that, right? The media and the government are on the same team, and so is the bureaucracy, and so are the corporations. And so I think that's kind of a dangerous aspect that makes it hard to be this so-called free and fair and open democracy with a lot of free speech and stuff, because that's what we have is essentially state-run media, state actors, more or less, masquerading as everyday journalists. So
the media doesn't fearmonger about Trump enough?
Apparently not.
Has he considered that maybe, just maybe, the media had been fearmongering about Trump so much, so often, that Americans have become desensitized to it? Has he considered that?
That's certainly true.
Has he considered the fact that Joe Biden ran his campaign almost entirely on Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and it wasn't working? Why do you think it wasn't working? This is the most brain dead argument I have heard on MSNBC, and that is saying something, because there are a lot of brain dead arguments made on MSNBC. But we're about to hear more. So Joe Scarborough argues that journalists who are trying to be objective actually end up helping Trump. So maybe don't be objective. Let's watch.
Even Arlington, you've seen major newspaper outlets talk about, well, how will this impact Kamala Harris and the issue of Afghanistan after he goes? And he
does a thumbs up and pictures.
Well, and just acts like a brute and desecrates Arlington. That's not a time to say, well, how does it, it's, but again, we see it time and time again. For some reason, the mainstream media, what are we, 9 years in to Donald Trump's era in American politics, still doesn't know how to cover Donald Trump. They're objective.
Well, as Anna brought up, it seems like they've been covering Trump the way they always have, but the issue you're having is it's not working. And now you're so desperate. This is what it rings to me, is desperation, because you actually maybe know the internal polls. We know that, hey, Kamala Harris is kind of struggling secretly in this presidential race. And so you're so desperate that you're going to go on TV and say, you know what? We as journalists should just stop being objective, okay? Let's just openly admit we're going to manipulate people, and this is the game plan, okay?
Activity actually is not objective at all. It ends up playing to Donald Trump's advantage.
Don't be objective because it plays to Donald Trump's advantage? Why? Because journalists want to answer a question about how Kamala Harris would handle Afghanistan, what her views on Afghanistan happen to be. Do the American voters have the right to know where Kamala?
No, apparently they don't. And here is the subtle admission that Scarborough and all these people are making, which is that if Kamala Harris has a better chance of winning the election if she doesn't talk to journalists, doesn't face any scrutiny, doesn't have to explain her policy positions or anything like Anna brought up, then that is kind of an admission that she must not have a candidacy or a future presidency that actually can stand up to scrutiny, right? Her policy positions, if she does actually have them, must not be very good or very popular with people if you're trying so hard to hide them, right? She just must not be that good at this. But, you know, maybe that's why, again, they're making the case, okay, if Kamala Harris objectively is not that good at this, then we have to not be objective. So I guess that's what the argument they're trying to make there. That said, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. And until next time, I've been Vince with Resist the Mainstream. Peace.